no meat, just salt.
Your grass is on fire.
Pour some water right there. Hooray! Aaron come over earlier, the guy that owns the truck, and was helping with some stuff. Working on getting stuff buttoned up. He worked on putting the coils on over here, getting everything plugged up, zip tied out the way, everything kind of hooked up. All the connectors and sensors, and then got this side together while I worked on finishing the bracket over here. So this is, I don't know if you can see it or not, this is the bracket that I made for the Holley. So I've got a bracket that the factory ECU, I'm pretty sure I showed it before, factory ECU mounts, bolts to it, so the factory computer is sit on the plastic mount. Then I've made a small little bracket tab right there to mount the fuse to, and then the relay is under there bolted to the little piece right, and then of course got that bracket I made for the two relays in the other one, and this one bolts down there in the back side and over here, and then I've got the other relay under there bolted to the back side of the Holley mount. Everything's ran. Been working on getting some of this other stuff buttoned up. This is the power for the starter. I gotta run it still. Still gotta run it. I've got all the grounds ran. I got one ram to the body, one ran to the frame, one ran to the motor. I'm gonna use the factory box that the S10 uses. Right there. Runs the wire over the fuse box. And I've got alternator wire running down. I'm gonna make a mount for it, runs under there, back to the box. Only dilemma now is this wire was hooked to the factory side post terminal, and it's meant to go up to the side post battery. Oh, but I cut the side post terminal off because we're gonna do a top post because side posts are bullshit. So this was meant to go up front here. So that's why it's so short, but now it's gonna go up there. So tomorrow I've gotta go to the parts store and get me some wiring and a big ring terminal for it, basically. Over here's the list. Got things like type fuel tank, mount cooler lines, oil entrance, cooling fan get wired up, make an intake, make the exhaust, install the Holley harness / run wires. Gotta wire the fuel pump up, fluids, throttle cable, weld the bung for the wideband, O2, mount the starter, finish the battery cables, PCV system, I gotta buy a new PCV valve, and a route to a catch can, which I've got one laying around, don't have to make it, luckily. Gotta make an overflow tank, and then change the filter for the ADE and clean the pan, and make a fuel gauge work in the Holley. So, what the fuck are you doing over here, dude? Bro, what are you doing, my guy? We're making a mess. So besides that, that's pretty much it. Gotta put some sleeves over some cooler lines down here when I mount them. But besides that, I'm getting a belt. We're getting there. Hopefully get some things buttoned up and get her on the road to firing up here soon. Don't goose me, mother. Need to plug this cap off for the evap. But besides that, and the throttle cable is the other thing up here, and run some other wires. So I might work on running that wiring right now and get some of that stuff buttoned up, throttle cable, so everything up top will be done, and I can just go ahead and start working on everything underneath, you know, tucking the cooler lines up, running the exhaust, the drive shaft, and running the fuel pump wiring, and working on still the wiring. I took that in it, but it was about that long, what was left of the factory wire that went from the main power fuse block, fucking whatever you want to call it. It's just a giant fucking 175 amp fuse that mounts down here on the bottom. Meant to run up and into a side post terminal on this side. I think I explained to you guys last time. Everything else pretty much works and fits and runs that way, like the alternator wire runs back along there, looks good. I went and got a new battery cable and got ran some new power. Took the alternator one. I'm pretty sure this is just a fusible link that it's got tied in there from the factory. This is gonna run to the fuel pump. What I'll probably do is find the fuel pump wire that runs back there, because it plugs into the factory harness where it goes down for at least the current performance wiring portion of it does. It plugs into the factory harness to run back, to use the fuel gauge, all that shit, factory, you know, prime the pump. This is a tachometer output. This is gonna get just clipped and tucked up out the way, because we don't gotta have an aftermarket tachometer, because we've got both screens, 3.5 and a 7. And then this, I believe, is just the power, also keyed switch source. This also keyed switch source, and then another keyed, I believe. One of these goes straight power, one of these is a keyed, and one of these gets a constant, and the other one is key for the transmission. Red white wire right here, that's going to be a switch, 12 volts. This is the red directly to the battery, green a fuel pump, black chassis ground, which is a brake switch, red supplies power transmission solenoid, be connected directly to the battery, or a constant battery source capable of 5 amps. And then a switch power, the red white for the transmission, is also switch 12 volt. It doesn't want it hooked up to the ECU switched power, so the transmission one and the ECU one have to be on different switched sources, so they can't backfeed, or might just put this on a relay. So if I put this on a relay, basically what will happen when I key the ignition, it's going to kick power to this off of the switch source, and then it also kicks power to the relay as a trigger to flip the switch in the relay, and then it'll get its own, fuck out of here, what the fuck? It'll get its own 12 volt source straight from the battery. Gotta hook up the CAN bus. With the controller has plenty of wire length to go from in there all the way out here to the computer, perfectly fine. But to run the 7-inch dash, they give you this extension cable, and the monitor comes and it's got 2 females for 2 of these. So this is their extension 4-foot that goes from up here, is supposed to go all the way across and in. It ain't gonna make it in. It ain't gonna make it to that connector. But the 3.5-inch monitor just plugs in at the bottom of the 7 now. So it's got 5 feet of wire or more, so it's got too much. And it's like, damn, now I gotta figure something out. So instead of ordering an 8-foot extension, I am just going to cut and splice these. I know someone in there is like, oh, you can't cut and splice, can boss. How do you think they're wired originally? They're cut and fucking put together. I was looking at HP Academy. I do a lot of their classes and webinars and courses. Really good source of information. There is some stuff they can work on, but still not bad. I was looking and they were talking about the way to wire it, this, that, and the other. Seems pretty straightforward. If they can splice in another CAN bus to like several that are coming down, like they look like they had 3 green and 3 white, and they're stepping down to 1 single to run somewhere. And then I guess they're twisted, like all the way through here it's twisted for some reason, kind of like this adapter harness. These power wires would also probably be twisted inside the loom, you just wouldn't see it. So like this orange one, it's twisted. I guess there's a purpose for it and the way it picks up signal or something. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the 3.5-inch monitor wire, cut a section out of it that has the exact length I need to just run down through the firewall, or the back side of the firewall under the dash, and plug into the connector for the monitor. And I'll take that chunk that I cut out, and I'm gonna cut this and splice it in between this. That way now I can add like 2 or 3 feet, and that'll get me the ability to run this thing all the way, because right now I can, if I tuck it behind some shit, like that's the farthest I'm gonna get it right there, about right there, and it's gotta go in still. I know they tell you, you're like, oh, the cannonball stuff, you can't fucking blah, 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 blah. All I did was take, because this was too long, the other one was too short to go across the motor, so I took and cut a section out, a long section out of the really long one to the display, because it doesn't need to go very far from where we're going to put it. So that'll give us perfect length there. This ought to give us enough length to go across the engine bay and get from the holley harness to the 7-inch screen. So I'm going to finish wiring these up. I've just got little wire crimped together pieces, heat shrinking that, and then putting a big piece of heat shrink over it. So it should work. I don't see why it wouldn't. The wires are still twisted all the way through. It's just they're one section there, so only one way to find out. We'll try here in a minute. We're getting there. We're getting there. Hoosier's gutted his new toy already. Every time I clean up stuff and he gets a new toy and he just guts the next one. Moment of truth here. I don't have power hooked up for, one is fuel pump, one is transmission, I believe that's what, yeah, this one's a transmission. I don't have those two hooked up. I am just going to put power. It's going to have power to the holley, the main power to the rest of the factory system and the current system. So fingers crossed. We'll see if there's any sort of noises or anything here. Make sure I don't let the smoke out of nothing. We'll snug this fucker up so there's no arcing, no fuck up in a computer of any sort. And this thing keeps fucking wagging in front of the fucking camera. Drives me nuts. Moment of truth. I don't hear nothing. I don't see nothing. I need to check for keyed 12 volt. So I'll probably check some of these real quick with a voltmeter. If I don't hold these straight up like that, if I try and spin them around, it won't read. But it's gotta have 12 volts cranking, and it's gotta have 12 volts key on. What'll happen is if it doesn't have 12 volts with cranking, when you go to crank it, it kills the power. Now nothing has power to start, and it won't start. It'll have all the power in the world to crank it. It says don't hook up switched power for the computer, for the engine side and the transmission side. It says don't put them on the same source, because if one back feeds the other, then the truck won't turn off when you turn the key off. It will continue to run. But at least know what doesn't have 12 volts. Now we'll flip us the key. Shit dinging. Oh, shit's dinging. See if ignition E's got 12 volts. Yep, 12 volts. And the ECU makes, or the radio makes noise. Looks like it's supposed to. Alright, that's good. Now I just need to figure out what I'm going to tie into and where I'm going to tie into it.
Some people dream of success while you're gonna wake up and work hard at it. Nothing is impossible. Make your dreams come true. Just do it.